Welcome to the Belmont Forum and the E-Infrastructures and Data Management Projects Toolkit Training Module 3 of 3. This will focus on additional considerations for data management beyond the why data management and how data management. Some key concepts and definitions. Digital repositories are any entity providing long-term data storage, typically affiliated with a research institution or university. A persistent identifier is a unique reference to a researcher, dataset, or other digital object that distinguishes it from all others and typically includes a stable hyperlink to the object that may be discovered. An example would be a DOI. Data citation is another concept we'll cover. It's a process to enable the discovery of data and digital objects beyond a digital creator through the creation of a persistent identifier and the ability to reference a dataset or other digital object in research publications. An institutional repository, again, is any type of digital repository located and affiliated within one specific institution. These are typically located at a university or a research institution. Other digital repositories may be disciplinary in nature and not linked to one single institution. Rather than any institution, they serve many communities across institutions and exist to serve a discipline. These data proposed digital repositories have a focused scope and audience, whereas institutional repositories are typically created with the intent of preserving access to scholarly publications from the institution's researchers. But more and more, this also includes things beyond publications, including data. Here's one example of a repository, one that is definitely trusted. The Figshare makes your data more discoverable and open to all readers. It's secure hosting and visualization in the browser of all file types. Authors can easily upload files with no concerns about file size or format, and all data becomes citable as it creates a DOI. Dryad is another repository. I've just mentioned two, but these are some of the bigger ones. Dryad uses DSpace, a free and open source repository software that preserves and access all types of digital content. Dryad allows scientists to submit data which may be linked to related publications using that data and assigns digital object identifiers to enable data citation. A persistent identifier would be any globally unique identifier, and once it's assigned, it refers to a single object and is not reassigned. It's persistent in that way. A digital object identifier is one form, widely used for data. Orchid ID is an ID used for researchers. Persistent ID is foundational to advancing the FAIR principles because it's key to have these unique identifiers to separate things from other things. It advances data sharing. It underpins citation of data sets. Without some persistent ID, there's no way to uniquely identify a data set and cite that data set. And persistent ID also helps to connect people and outputs. Whatever you produce should be connected to you, and an Orchid ID with other IDs help you do that. It also can help to connect outputs to funding and organizations. So an aggregation of different things from funding agencies or researchers linked to different funding agencies can also be done more easily, having persistent identifiers connecting projects, papers, data sets, and people. So what is an Orchid ID? If you haven't done so already, please visit orchidid.org and register. There's an example of mine, the Orchid ID that I have. It's an open researcher and contributor identifier. This Orchid ID is a 16-digit unique identifier. It's free to register, and you use your ID for linking reviews, articles, data sets, and many other things throughout your scholarly life. An Orchid ID captures biographical details. This is sort of an authority file for researchers, creating unique sort of record for every single individual. Orchid ID is used around the world by publishers, research organizations, and funders. So it's a great way to hopefully automate as many forms as possible. Knowing your Orchid ID, it identifies you and keeps that information from your Orchid ID to fill out other forms that are relevant to whatever your research areas are. The idea is that you'd have a researcher that asserts an affiliation as an employer and has a connection with that employer. They also will have a connection anytime you author somewhere and asserts a relationship with that author through that publisher. There's also funders, and you can assert an award. And all of these things are hyperlinked, creating sort of an ontology of your scholarly life through your Orchid ID. And employers and funders and publishers will also know things about you by having this connection. An Orchid ID, again, will distinguish you and ensure your research outputs and activities are correctly attributed to you. If you have a common name, this is one way to make sure that you are uniquely identifiable. It reliably and easily connects you with your contributions and affiliations. This also improves recognition and discoverability for you and your research outputs. It's interoperable, it's persistent, and it disambiguates shared names, different versions of names, name changes, transliteration that can occur across languages. So an Orchid ID is a unique and persistent identifier to solve many of these issues for individual researchers. What are some other examples of persistent identifiers, and some specifically for data? One that I mentioned already is the digital object identifier. A DOI is a globally unique alphanumeric string assigned to a registration agency to identify content and provide a persistent link to its location. You've probably already seen these things in journal articles, but the same thing exists for data. These may be assigned to any item of intellectual property that's defined by structured metadata, and you can see some combination of a journal's code, its name, and some other things help to distinguish that DOI from other issues or data sets within an archive or a journal. There's also archival resource key. This is a URL designed to support long-term access to information objects. And there's examples of other persistent URLs as well. We just mentioned DOI as the sort of most used standard. How to obtain a DOI for a data set. That all sounds great. How do I get one? Well, many places will provide a DOI. Here's just one example. You provide data and necessary citation profile. This is the metadata, outlining certain things about the data. Its creator, its title, the publisher, the year, other important factors. DataCite will ask for those things. Dublin Core will ask for those same things. An ERC will know who, what, when. Metadata answers all of those types of questions. Additional information, the owner, owner group, co-owners, and then you will receive a DOI to be used for citation purposes. So you can include this in your CV, include it on your curriculum vitae, you can put it on your website, you can have this thing hyperlinked within a publication that's using that data set, and that way readers can access that same data set for reuse. But it honestly depends on your organization. Some institutional repositories will admit your DOIs and prefer that you do so within your own institution. Here's a short list of some other DOI registration agencies. Many places have the ability to mint DOIs, and those are some from different Belmont Forum affiliated places and elsewhere. Some of the principles of data citation. It's important. Data should be considered a legitimate, citable product of research. For credit and attribution, you do all the work, you collect the data, the hard work of cleaning it, analyzing it, you want it to be cited as well. Data citation should facilitate giving scholarly credit and normative and legal attribution to all contributors to the data. Evidence. In scholarly literature, whenever and wherever a claim relies upon data, the corresponding data should be cited. This data will allow people to do things related to reproducibility, to validate findings, and find new discoveries. A unique identification. For a data citation, it should include a persistent method for identification that is machine actionable, globally unique, and widely used by a community. Access is another principle of data citation. Data citation should facilitate access to the data, make it discoverable, have the metadata, the code, and other materials as necessary for both humans and machines to reuse data. It should be persistent. Unique identifiers, data, and metadata should persist beyond the lifespan of the data they describe. Specificity and verifiability. Data citation should facilitate identification of, access to, and verification of the specific data that support a claim. For interoperability and flexibility, data citation methods should be flexible, but enable interoperability across communities. How to cite data? Well, it's just like citing a published article or book. You provide the information necessary for someone else to be able to reference and look up that same thing. And with a DOI or another persistent identifier, it's easily located. You include all the necessary information to attribute that citation to the creator. Broadly applicable data citation standards have not yet been established, so it's difficult to answer this question, but use standards that are adopted by relevant academic journals if you're giving guidance for authors, or the repository where you're depositing data and it's being ingested, or a professional organization. For data cite here, they say to collect data and create a data set, then describe it, assign it a DOI, then reuse and reference can happen. And then you will ultimately enjoy the benefits of findability, tracking citations, reusability of the data, and a new measurement of your impact on research. Again, if you have further questions, there are many data management training modules out there created by other folks that are available and findable through the Belmont Forum Toolkit. There's also best practices and standards there, broken out by geographic area, role, all sorts of other documents that should help, that also link to other trainings. Thank you.